All right, thank you. So, good morning, everyone. I'm Kari White, and I'm the owner of Domestique Financial, which provides CFO advisory services for small and medium-sized businesses. So, thought I would start with a background about myself. Before I started my own business, I spent about 20 years in various corporate finance and accounting roles. I started my career back in the States in San Francisco. I was working for PwC and got my CPA license with them, which is similar to the chartered accountant status in the UK. Then I quickly realized accounting was not the right fit for me. I found myself wanting to understand what the story behind the numbers were and be more involved in the strategy side of things. So I left accounting and switched into finance roles. My background is largely in commercial real estate, doing a lot of acquisition and development projects. Then I switched into the retail sector. Within that, also doing brand expansion. And then about the last 10 years of my career were in the technology sector. I was working for a company in California called Viasat, which is a satellite and communications company. I was fortunate enough back in 2019, they moved me from California to their Switzerland office to eventually become the director of finance for their European business. And during that time, Viasat also acquired a UK-based company called Inmarsat. So I'm not sure if any of you have heard of that one, but that acquisition happened while I was there. So after about 20 years in the corporate space, I decided to pivot and take my skill set, and I now support small business owners. So with that pivot of leaving corporate, I also pivoted and left Switzerland, and now I'm based down in Portugal and run my business remotely from here. So a little bit of backstory about why I named my company Domestique Financial. It's a tie-in to my love for cycling, but realizing I probably should have known some of the LMP marketing people before I made that decision because most people don't know anything about professional cycling, which is fine. So for those of you that don't, within professional cycling, each rider on the team has a very specific role. And one of the roles on the team is called the domestique rider. And the job of that domestique rider is really to make life easier for the team leader, whether that's to ride in front of them to help block the wind. If the race gets away and breaks up ahead on the road, then the domestique rider has to work extra hard to pull their team leader back to the front, things like that. And then towards the end of the race, the domestique's job is pretty much done. And your hope is that your team leader then goes on to win the race. So that's the approach I bring to the business owners that I work with. My goal is really to make life easier for the clients that I work with. I want my business owners to be able to focus more on the parts of the business they actually enjoy. And my job is really just helping make sure they can achieve whatever their version of success is. So I'm currently working with clients back in the US as well as the UK and then also internationally. And I think what sets me apart is I bring a unique perspective of having the accounting background and that skill set, but also having the training and the mindset of the more forward-thinking financial strategy. So what does it mean when I say I provide CFO advisory services? What exactly is that? One thing I wanted to clarify first is the difference between CFO advisory, or it's oftentimes called financial direction in the UK, versus accounting. So I am no longer an accountant. I don't do any of the accounting work or the bookkeeping or any of the tax and compliance work for my clients. Instead, I work alongside those people instead of replacing them. The way I like to explain it is bookkeeping and accounting is very much about bringing you up to present day and recording the past. And then where CFO advisory comes in is helping the business owner use that data to put a plan in place for the future of the business. And I do realize some accountants also provide the financial direction and the advisory side, which is great. But I just wanted to clarify that I am only focused on the advisory piece. So the goal of my services when I work with my businesses is really to help them bridge the gap between where their business is today and where they want it to be in the future. Making sure the business owner really understands the financial statements that their accountant is providing them. Also teaching the business owner that they can actually use that financial data to make better decisions for the business. It doesn't just have to be a decision based on gut feel and hoping it was the right timing. And then also helping the business put a roadmap in place for the future of the business. So yes, it's financial based. So I am very focused on helping my clients increase their profitability and cash flow. But I also want to make sure the business owner just gains better clarity on how to make the better decisions for their business and then helping them put that roadmap in place for the future. So I find it sometimes easier to go over specific examples of what I work with on my clients. So some of the problems I help them solve, cash flow. Cash flow is the biggest one. Business cannot stay in business if it does not have consistent positive cash flow. And the thing I've noticed when shifting to the small business world from my corporate background is a lot of business owners are really focused on their revenue and their profit, which is important, but then they don't understand why they receive an income statement from their accountant that says they made X amount last quarter or last year, but that doesn't match what's in the bank account. So really helping them understand where all the money is flowing within and out of their business. I do very detailed cash flow forecasts and plans for all my business owners. A lot of things that impact their cash flow will be if there's a business that has projects with significant long lead times. One of my clients back in the States is a general contractor, and he's now been approved to bid on government jobs. And most of these jobs are multiple six-figure jobs, but it's the government. They don't pay till the end and they're really slow to pay. So working with him on how to figure out how can he capitalize on those opportunities, but still have the cash flow to support the rest of the business during those 9-12 month long lead projects. Staffing concerns. Some of my clients are in the trade space. There's a painter who obviously can't paint outside of buildings and houses in the winters when it's snowing or raining outside. So how do we have a plan for him to make sure he can weather those ebbs and flows? No pun intended on the weather, sorry. And then lastly, a thing I see a lot is business owners that are not paying themselves consistently. So helping them put a plan in place so they have more confidence that they can be taking money out of the business consistently to pay themselves to make sure they didn't just sign themselves up for a very expensive hobby. Profit and pricing are other things I focus on a lot with my clients. Oftentimes a business will have multiple revenue streams, whether that's different product or service offerings, and the business owner is usually not diving into those as deep as they should. They're typically looking at the top level of, oh, this is how much revenue I made and what the margin was, but they're not looking at the different product or service offerings to really see which ones are generating the most profit, which ones are potentially not profitable, but they didn't realize it because it was masked by some of the other parts of the business. So helping them get more clear on that and making sure they're shifting their focus to the higher margin work. Pricing is another one. Again, this is what I saw in the corporate space that I've now brought to my small business owners is when I ask a business owner, how do you think about your pricing? It's almost always, well, I take the cost of my good or service and then I add a markup, which is a good start. But how do you make sure that markup is truly covering your overhead costs? Are you thinking about your break-even points? So, there's more detail you can put into the pricing than just saying, okay, here's the cost, let's throw a percent markup on it. Growth and expansion, this is really my favorite, kind of my sweet spot when a business is starting to see some success, but now the business owner is getting a little more stressed out about that, of, helping them really understand what is the true cost of that growth and how do we make sure we know the right timing of when to invest in the growth for the business, and then also figuring out what is the best way to fund that growth. So really just giving the business owner guidance on how to put the plan in place so they have more comfort that the growth of business can be successful and it doesn't have to just be oh, we're getting more calls for, more revenues coming in, is now the right time to add more headcount or, invest in more infrastructure. And then lastly, acquisition and exit planning. One of my clients is in the trade space and he's looking to acquire another trades business. So I'm helping him evaluate, is that really going to be complementary or potentially detrimental to his business? And if that does become the right call, what is the right timing on that and putting the plan in place to make sure that that acquisition is successful? And then succession planning is something I talk to all my clients about. It usually falls in one of two sides. Right now, I have two business owners that are in their early 30s, just starting to have kids. They're not even thinking about retirement, but some of their goals are wanting to be able to step back a little bit from their business, to make sure they had more time for their family. So helping them put a plan in place to make sure there's the cash flow to either support them investing in additional infrastructure to more streamline processes so they can step away, or having the additional cash flow that they can then afford to hire a new team member so that they could take some things off of their plate. And then I also do support the business owner that is looking to sell in, say, 3 to 5 years' time. To be clear, my role is not that actual sale. I would bring someone in when that timing comes closer. But my role is to make sure the business is as financially healthy as possible leading up to that sale. So when the time comes, the business owner can get the highest value during that sale as possible. So what are the types of businesses that I work with? I'm currently industry agnostic, but the ideal client and business profile for me is a business that's been in place at least 2 years or longer. I don't typically work with startups. The businesses are generally privately owned and owner managed, and they typically have 2 or more employees. Solopreneurs are usually not the right fit for this type of service. And then my ideal, if I can be greedy, is really that business owner that has the growth mindset and really wants to learn how to be more successful within their business. Some common phrases you might hear that would mean the business might be a good introduction for me is a business owner that says they're growing, but with that, their personal stress is also growing. Somebody that mentions they're working like crazy, but by the time they pay their teams, there's not really much left over to pay themselves. I don't know what my business can actually afford. Back to the difference between the profit and the cash flow. The business owner knows there's money coming in and they're doing deals, but they're not seeing that money stick around in the bank account. So what's going on? And then the business owner that knows they need a plan for the future of the business, but maybe they just haven't had a chance to come up for a breath of fresh air to put that plan in place. Those are all good introductions for me. So in addition to, someone that fits the ideal client profile, other good introductions for me are any accountants that don't offer the financial direction or advisory services. I don't want to step on anybody's toes, and there's more than enough work to go around. So the accountants that don't focus on that more financial direction, those are great introductions for me because our services can be very complementary for our clients. And then really any other fractional consultants, either HR, small business lawyers, fractional COOs, anyone that really works in the B2B space, I love to connect with to see is there any way we can, support our clients with each of our service offerings. And then lastly, one thing I am interested in getting more involved in this year is if anybody is a part of an organization that provides any free resources for business owners, I would love to get involved with that, whether it's providing educational webinars or any tips for small business owners that are kind of more in the DIY stage and not really ready for these services. I would love to get involved with any organizations that support business owners in that sense. So that's all I had for today. I have had a chance to have one-on-ones with some of you, which has been great. So I'd love to set up more of those. So here's my contact information. I do also send out a newsletter just once a month with finance tips for small business owners. If anybody is interested in signing up for that, you can scan that QR code as well.
Thank you. Kari, any questions? You're all mute.
Harry, not really a question, but just an observation around your name of the business. I know a lady who's got a digital marketing business in the UK who's also, well, she's a very, very successful digital marketer, but she's also a cycling fiend. And does all sorts of tours all around Europe. She's doing a gradual from, I think, London to Rome, stage by stage. She will certainly get your
There's one.
Domestique thing. I'll introduce you. I'm sure you'll have a good conversation.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Any other questions? So I'm sure, Colin, you've got some accountants that you know that might well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I believe, Kari, that I might have already sent you my sort of standing contact lists.
Yes, and
But perhaps we need to have a further one-to-one to look through that and try and identify some accountants that fit the bill for you. Probably a bit more input from me would be helpful from your point of view.
yeah, that would be great if you don't mind. I have started going down the list and did reach out to you on a few of them, but would appreciate any extra insight you have. So yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, and I do know a few people who um, effectively find work for fractionals.
Hmm.
Um, one of whom I think I've introduced you to, but there's a couple of others, so we'll look at that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.